Hello everyone and welcome to Big Rock Moto. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you're new to motorcycling, bikes like this Kawasaki Eliminator or Honda's Rebel 300 and 500, these may be attractive to you because of their combination of classic styling and very low approachable seat heights. While 300cc models will often struggle to keep up on the freeway with the higher speed traffic, 500cc models like this Eliminator have much more power for the highway in the real world. For 2024, Kawasaki have given us this bike, the brand new Eliminator. It slots in below Kawasaki's larger, heavier, more powerful Vulcan S, but also above something like the competitive Honda Rebel 300, and really is designed to go, I think, head-to-head with Honda's Rebel 500. With its relatively lightweight, punchy engine, and pretty sporty riding position, is this the best value beginner cruiser motorcycle for 2024? That's what we're going to find out today. All right, as we get started into this review, I'm really curious. Put this down in the comments below. Assuming you're shopping for like a beginner style, affordable motorcycle in this kind of price range, are you going to get a cruiser style, a naked style, a sports style, or maybe an adventure bike in this sort of price category? I'm really curious to know what you would choose. Let me know what category you would choose and your reasoning for that down in the comments below. I think that'll be a good little discussion. All right, let's quickly review the models and pricing for the new Eliminator. So MSRP for the standard non-ABS model is $6,649. If you get the ABS, which this bike is equipped with, this comes in at $6,949. Now, you can also go up to the SE ABS model. That's going to be $300 more at $7,249. But with the SE model, you get some really nice improvements. You get exclusive color and graphics, a 2-pattern seat, a headlight cowl, fork boots, and a weatherproof USB-C outlet for charging something like your phone. Now, how does this compare to something like Kawasaki's Vulcan S? You might also be looking at that bike because it doesn't cost very much more. So the Vulcan S, so this bike is 450cc, the Vulcan S is 650cc. The price on the Vulcan S is $7,349 with no ABS or $7,849 with ABS, and that represents a really good value, honestly. Now, the thing to remember is that the Eliminator is much lighter than the Vulcan S. So this is over 110 pounds lighter than the Vulcan. So for newer riders, for riders who may not be super strong, maybe you're not that tall, the 20% less weight, I think that's right, yeah, about 20% less weight on the Eliminator, that's a huge deal, and it's something you really need to keep in mind. All right, let me walk you through the basic specs of the Eliminator. So the wet weight is 388 pounds or 176 kilograms. Fuel capacity is 3.4 gallons or 13 liters. Fuel range is around 150 miles or around 240 kilometers. That's assuming worst case if you get like 50 miles a gallon or about 4.7 liter per 100 kilometer. But in my testing, I got 55 to 60 miles a gallon, and I'll put the metric conversion somewhere below. So your fuel range, even despite not having a huge fuel tank, is actually pretty respectable. Your engine is a 451cc parallel twin. She's putting out 51 horsepower at 10,000 RPM, 32 foot-pounds of torque or 43 Newton meters at 7,500 RPM. Transmission is a 6-speed slip assist, chain drive, and positive neutral finder. So a couple things there. The slip assist clutch makes sure that if you downshift like too rapidly, and you get into too low of a gear too quickly, that the rear wheel won't lock up as much, so it improves your ride there. And then a positive neutral finder, I really like that because when you're at a stop, have you ever done this when you're at a stop and you click up the transmission to try to get to neutral, but you end up in second gear? Well, with the Kawasaki, with the positive neutral finder, it's not possible. Anytime you click up from first gear, it can only go to neutral. It can't go up into second. So it's just a nice convenience feature that I wish more motorcycles would have. Suspension travel is about 4.7 inches or 120 millimeters on the front and 3.1 inches or 80 millimeters on the rear. That's not very much suspension travel. We'll talk about how that affects the performance of this bike when we get out on the road. Now, in terms of suspension adjustability, you have no adjustments on the front. On the rear, you do have just a basic preload adjuster for varying weights. Tires and wheels, so you have an 18-inch front wheel and a 16-inch rear wheel. The front is a 130/70/18, the back is a 150/80/16. Brakes, the front brake is a 2-piston caliper with a 310mm disc, and the brakes are by Nissan. They're a good quality brake and they work well. The rear brake is 1-piston and 220mm. And then for maintenance requirements on the Eliminator, so your minor services are going to be 7,600 miles or 12,000 kilometers. By minor service, I just mean oil change, basic chain tensioning, basic stuff like that. And then your major service interval, which typically is going to include like a valve inspection, a valve clearance inspection, that's going to be 15,000 miles or 24,000 kilometers there. All right, let me show you the riding position and the seat height and the ergonomics on the Eliminator. So our seat height is pretty low, 28.9 inches or about 735 millimeters. A little bit higher than the Rebel 500 if you're looking for something just as low as you can get, but I think still pretty reasonable. So I am 5'10" or 1.78 meters, 178 centimeters, I guess I should say. And let me show you how I fit on the bike. So in my height, I have such an easy reach to the ground. So that's why this kind of motorcycle is so popular with newer riders or shorter riders. Let me show you the ergonomics and the riding position. So at my height with somewhat longer legs, I have a 32-inch inseam. You know, my legs feel a little bit high up and a little bit cramped. That's because if you look at the foot peg in relation to the seat, it's fairly high. It's not uncomfortable, it's just something that I notice at my height. But you can see the overall, let me try to put the bike on a side stand. The bike's gonna lean a little bit. The riding position, it's not my favorite, like it's not perfect for me. I feel like I have a little bit of a reach to the bars. And my back, it kind of arches my back a little bit, but overall, it's not bad. Like you can ride this bike a few hours and be pretty comfortable. What I do like about it is that unlike a lot of cruiser bikes, the thing I really don't like about cruisers is oftentimes they'll have a foot forward control like up here. The problem with that is you don't have very good control of the bike. I like my feet to be underneath my knee, underneath my hips and my waist, so that if there's a bump in the road, I can push down and stand up and get off the seat, either to stretch a little bit, or if there's like a big impact that I need to take. You just have much better control. Also, if you see some bikes that have the handlebars way up, horrible, horrible for motorcycle control. This is a lot better with this more standard style bar. So the ergonomics are decent, and the seat actually feels pretty comfortable as well. Let me take you on a quick tour around the Eliminator, kind of show you the features and some of the things on the bike. So the lighting I like, you get all LEDs. That's one of the things you're looking at a modern motorcycle is like you see LED headlight, LED turn signals. I also like that they gave us hazard flashers. That's a really useful feature that a lot of motorcycles don't have. And then your rear lighting, you've got an LED rear tail light, and then you've got LED turn signals as well. Let's look at the dash on the Eliminator. I like this little LCD. It kind of has that circular style that you might be looking for on a bike like this, but you have useful information here. So you have a big tachometer along the top. You've got a clock, you've got a speedometer, a gear indicator, then you have a fuel gauge down below. The Bluetooth is flashing because this bike does have the Rideology app with Bluetooth, so you can connect to a phone app if you want to track your ride and do different features like that. And then if you want to scroll through, so the odometer, trip A, trip B, miles per gallon, which is set to UK right now. I don't know how to change that. Average miles per gallon, and then fuel range. So you get some useful information about fuel and mileage. And from the riding position of the bike, the display is pretty readable and legible, unlike some LCDs out there that some like the Hondas have had in recent years. So I like it. I think it works well. We've already gone through the specs, so I'm not going to go over all that again. You can see the black painted wheels, the Nissan brakes, the telescopic fork. You've got your radiator up here. You've got your frame. You can see your frame elements. I kind of like that. You've got your parallel twin engine. The exhaust does kind of stick out down here. It's a little bit of an eyesore, but there's engineering reasons that they have to do that. Side of your engine, you can see the ABS sticker because this bike does have the ABS. Foot pegs, brakes, your passenger pegs, which fold down. You have preload collars on the rear twin shocks. You've got this pretty large exhaust. They have to do these large exhausts because of emissions and noise requirements in the modern era. It's just the reality that we get these huge exhausts, which is a common thing that the owners will switch out. Your rear brake there, rear tire. You know, the cruisers kind of have this big fat tire. That's kind of the part of the style of it. And you get the smaller 16-inch wheel in the back. You can see there's some attachment points, probably for luggage racks or handles or different things. You do get a passenger seat, although it's not very good. So this is not a great bike if you're going to take a passenger for any sort of long distance. You know, around town would be fine, but probably not too much more than that. The seat is relatively comfortable, and then the fuel tank, which is pretty long. But again, that's that cruiser style. And then our controls are really basic and easy to use. Lighting, horn, emergency flashers, start, stop. Very, very simple. And then the mirrors, in the riding segment, I'll talk about this. The mirrors don't really stick out far enough, and I kind of just see my arms or shoulders in the mirrors, but we'll talk about that when we go out for a ride.
Okay, let's go for a ride on the Eliminator. Talk a little bit about how this thing performs out on the road. First thing I notice when I ride this bike, it is so lightweight and so low to the ground. It just is so easy to use. Very nice. I like that. And then, yeah, my legs are a little bit high up, but that's not that bad. Pretty quiet. You know, these parallel twins with the 180-degree crank like this, they have kind of a, I always call it an angry vacuum cleaner type of sound. They're not the most inspiring sound. It's not bad. It just doesn't sound like much. Very light clutch pull. Everything about this bike is just very, very easy to ride. Pulls up to 60 miles an hour or 100 kilometers an hour very, very easily, no problem. The engine is pretty smooth up to about, you know, 70 miles an hour. If you start to go like, you know, above, yeah, once you hit about 70, you start to feel some buzz at the engine. It seems to set in around 6,000 or 7,000 RPM. You feel a little bit of buzziness coming through. It's not terrible, but it's definitely there. And then the mirrors, so the mirrors they don't really come out far enough, so I kind of just see my arms in the mirror. Like, if this was my own personal bike, what I would need to do would be to like get a mirror extender that just brings this mirror out another like inch or two, and that would be all I would need. But really, you know, it's a pretty comfortable bike to be on the highway here. Really no real complaints about it. You get a nice smooth flow of wind because without any windshield to cause any wind buffeting, you get just full wind, but there's no buffeting, so your helmet stays pretty quiet, so that can be good. Right, a couple things I want to cover, the ride, kind of the ride quality, and also how we do kind of on some sportier riding, if you want to hit some twisties on your Eliminator. So I'm going to ride kind of quick over this cattle grate to show you something. So, so that's a big, like, sharp bump. So what happens with a cruiser style bike like this is the way that they get the bike so low to the ground is they give you a very short suspension travel. So the suspension only has about 3 inches of travel on the back. On a typical street bike, you'd have more like 4 to 5 inches. Adventure bikes have 8 or 9 inches, so you get the idea. So it can't really absorb bigger bumps very well, potholes, whatever it is. So you get kind of a rougher ride. That's one of the compromises that you make when you get a cruiser style bike and get that nice low seat height, is the ride quality is kind of sucky. Now, if you mostly ride smooth roads, it's fine. But if you have really, really rough roads, or you might do some dirt roads, or, you know, whatever, it doesn't give you a very smooth ride. It's just kind of how one of the design compromises of a bike like this. Now, in terms of sporty riding, so you know, this bike has plenty of power, even for more experienced riders. I mean, 50 horsepower on a bike that's under 400 pounds is actually pretty sporty. For a cruiser, This is actually, for a small cruiser, this is actually maybe the sportiest one because the riding position is a little bit better for this, and then the engine has pretty good pep to it. So if you want to get going fast, you've got to be willing to rev this thing all the way out to, you know, 10 or 11, it rev lines at 11,000 RPM. It's a small, high revving engine. You know, use all your RPM. Don't be shy. Don't short shift it. I mean, let that thing sing all the way to redline. And the handling is actually pretty good. It's not a sport bike, obviously, or whatever, but it's not bad. You will scrape the foot pegs. Another thing, you know, with the bike being low is you'll scrape the foot pegs if you get too aggressive. Excuse me, if you get too aggressive with your cornering, so that's one thing. But actually, for a little bit of sporty riding, it's really not bad because it doesn't have that stupid cruiser thing where your legs are out here. Your feet are kind of underneath you, and you have pretty good control of the bike. I mean, even going uphill, a steep uphill in the mountains, like you get up to 70 miles an hour, no problem. And it really does have a nice amount of power that you're not really going to outgrow. That's what I really like about this compared to like a 300 class cruiser or whatever bike. The 300s are just really weak, but the 500 or the 450 really gives you a nice amount of power that you can go. It'll do 100 miles an hour. Let's do some acceleration and braking. Full power. Full power. 60 miles an hour. 70 miles an hour. 80 miles an hour. Full braking. Full braking. Full braking. Full braking. Okay. The brakes are decent, you know. You can definitely find the limits of traction of the tires. And I highly recommend ABS brakes. This bike is an ABS bike, so I can go, if I have to do a panic stop, like, oh no, panic. Or if my brain panics and it's like, oh no, there's a deer or there's a person or whatever, or a car, and you jam the brakes too much, ABS will save your bacon and you won't crash. Probably won't crash. So I don't understand why anybody would ride a bike without ABS in the modern age where we are today. They're so much better. It's such a big safety factor because even if you never typically engage it, it's that one time that some crap hits, some crappy thing happens and your brain panics and you jam the brake and the bike won't lock up and slide. So please, please, please get ABS brakes. Please, I'm just begging you. Especially if you're more of a newer rider looking at this bike. It's such a huge safety benefit and there is zero downside to having ABS. Absolutely zero. Woo! I don't quite have enough room here to go 100, but you can see the bike will get to 100 miles an hour with not too much trouble.
All right, competition for the Kawasaki Eliminator. So if you're looking for a cruiser motorcycle around this engine size, around this price, and buying it brand new, I think there's really 5 main entries from the mainstream brands that I think you're probably considering, or I think you should consider. So you've got this, the Eliminator, you've got Honda's Rebel 500, the Royal Enfield Meteor 350, Kawasaki's Vulcan S, which steps up to that larger motorcycle, even though the price is pretty close to this, and then the Honda Rebel 300. So it's interesting, you know, the Eliminator is kind of in, I think that really it's this or the Rebel 500 if you want that 450, 500cc kind of small, affordable cruiser, right? If you go down to a Rebel 300 or a Royal Enfield Meteor 350, and I'm going to put this chart up on the screen here for you guys to see, you will save money by going down to the 300 or the 350, whether you get the Royal Enfield or the Honda Rebel or some other models out there. But you have to realize that like on the highway, so this motorcycle will do an honest like 100 miles an hour or pretty close to it. You're not going to be doing that with a 300 or a 350. The Rebel 300 and a Meteor 350 and bikes in that class, they do struggle a bit on the open freeways. Here in California where I live, I mean, freeway traffic is 80 to 90 miles an hour, you know, when there's no traffic jam anyway. So those won't really keep up with that, but this bike will. So that's something you got to keep in mind. I mean, if you want the lowest seat height, the Rebels do really well with their seat height. They have, it's over 1.5 inches lower than the Eliminator, whether you get the Rebel 500 or the 300. If you want more power, but you want to stick around this price point, a few $100 more, you could get that Vulcan S. Just keep in mind, you're going up 110 pounds in weight, so it feels much heavier, which is something you're going to notice. Royal Enfield has the best warranty, so if you really like that, then look at the Royal Enfield. I mean, don't discount the Royal Enfield entries. I know they're not as mainstream now in America anyway. I know in other countries they are, but in the US they're not as mainstream as maybe Kawasaki, but give those a hard look. They have a great warranty. You know, I've ridden those and tested a lot of those. The Hunter 350 is also a cool bike. You've got the Meteor, which is the cruiser style. Really check those out. Anyway, that's kind of my comparison. Let me know, what is your favorite bike in this category? Now, what would I buy if I was buying something around this price point at this engine size? Just being honest, I wouldn't buy a cruiser style at all. No, I wouldn't do it because I don't get it. I think unless you want this style or this kind of riding position or look, I mean, for like around $6 grand, $7 grand, you could get a small adventure motorcycle. And to me, something like a KTM 390 Adventure or the new Royal Enfield Himalayan 450 that's just coming out next month, you know, you're getting that off-road capability if you ever want it. It's really good for rough roads and potholes, upright, comfortable riding position, bigger fuel tanks, really good electronics. You got some wind protection on there. They do touring, they do sporty riding, they do commuting, and you get that off-road. So I just think bang for your buck, a small adventure bike is such a better deal than buying something like this, which really honestly can only do some basic street riding. So I would urge you to consider that unless you're stuck on, and I know there's people, they want a cruiser or they want a sport bike, but I'm telling you, take a look at adventure motorcycles or even dual sport motorcycles as well if you want something a little more dirt bikey, and just open up your options. All right, final thoughts on the Kawasaki Eliminator. This is a really great little motorcycle. I think Kawasaki did a great job bringing something in here around that 450cc, that 500 class, to slot between those smaller motorcycles like the 300s, but not as big, heavy, and expensive as going up to those 700cc, 800cc, heavier, more expensive cruiser-style bikes. Some things I like about the Eliminator, I mean, the price point's really good. I like that you can get ABS, and like I mentioned in the riding segment, please, 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 if you just do one thing for me, please get ABS. It could really save your life in a panic situation. Even if you think you're, you know, a great rider, which you may be, please get ABS. It's such a good safety feature to have. I just urge you to do that. Anyway, I do like the Eliminator. The engine is a little buzzy. We've talked about that. For a cruiser motorcycle, the ergonomics are good. They're sportier. You have good handling, control of the bike, unlike some cruisers where you've got that foot forward position, which I just don't think is a good idea. So I like that. I like that they kind of took like their Z400, or sorry, their Z500, kind of a sporty bike, and put the cruiser kind of style in there. So you still get kind of sporty handling and performance, but you get that cruiser look and that low seat height that so many people are looking for. This is a great bike for the money. Please check it out. I hope this review was useful. Please support Big Rock Moto. There's ways to do that down below. Other than that, please ride safe, and I will see you out there.